All right, everybody. Hi there, Michelle Smith with Z&B Consulting, and I'm excited to see you today for our last day of our webinar called Kickstart Your Year. And I'm hoping you've been enjoying doing these different activities and getting plans in place for your year ahead. On day one, we took time to look back at the past and kind of reflect on the past, because when we can reflect on the past, it helps us then to do what we did on day two, which was to look at the future. What is it that we want to do? And sometimes we have all these grand ideas of things we want to do, but maybe there's something that happened in the past that is making us think, ooh, we shouldn't do this. Or maybe there's some things like the homework for day two was to reflect on, is the plan you put together really realistic? Is it in alignment with you? Is it in alignment with your intentions? So if you're coming here today to day three and you've yet to do days 1 and 2, back up and go watch those recordings first and do day 1 and 2 so that you can have that good foundation for today. Because what we're doing today is on day 3, we are planning for success. So we looked at last year, we then put together a plan, and now we need to look at that plan and we need to think about 2 things. Number 1, what could hold us back? That's what's going to go on the line in the handout. What could hold us back? And then number 2, what could support us? So I'm going to talk about both of those things today, because when we have our plan, there's so many things that could just come in the way to hold us up. So you want to kind of think about those things so that you can be proactive and plan for them. So sometimes it may be like one of the things that sometimes holds people up is other people coming to them with things that they need. Oh, can you do this for me? I need this right away. Like earlier this week, that happened to me. I had a couple people from my team at the nonprofit reach out. They wanted to work on some things. And it was great that they wanted to work on them because they were on my list too. And they were things we needed to work on in partnership. But I had some other things I needed to take care of first. And when you're working in a team, that can be one of the downfalls, that you don't know if you're interrupting somebody else's time or not. So fortunately, these people had put like they'd made an appointment. I was able to look and say, yeah, this works, but it wasn't part of my original plan. So it was something that got in the way. So by knowing that that's something that could get in the way is other people requesting something from you when you're doing other things, you can then create a plan. So I had choices in the matter. I could have said, no, this time doesn't work for me, because fortunately one of the people didn't just interrupt me and say, hey, let's talk about this right now. And I know I'm guilty of doing that to people sometimes. This is what needs to happen right now for me. And so I'm going to reach out to the person just because I want to check it off my list, but I could be interrupting what they're doing. So this person was fortunately proactive and had made an appointment on my calendar. And so I was able to then have a choice in the moment to say, is this going to work for me to do this at this time, or is it not? And because I looked at my plan from the year ahead that I had done, like in what you guys did in day 2, I was able to know that what she wanted to talk about was really in alignment with what I was working on that day anyway. And so getting her input and her thoughts on her part of the puzzle we work in together in a team format was going to be helpful. So I was then able to restructure the other things that I was doing. So that's why you want to look at what could get in the way, because you want to know ahead of time, these are the things that normally happen. And when they happen, what are you going to do? Because chances are you're not going to stop these things from happening. Those of my clients or people who are watching here who have kids, you can't stop the baby from crying. Someone was going to be on here today, and I just got a little message from them hearing that they weren't going to come on because they finally had a very quiet house and they were trying to catch up on some recordings. So they're going to catch some of their own recordings. So they're going to catch the replay later, which is totally cool. You can't stop that baby from crying. You can't stop the kids from needing to be fed dinner, right? So these are things that happen, and they could get in the way of the plans that we have. So we need to know, what are we going to do to make sure the kids are still fed and they're still taken care of when they're crying? How are we going to handle that? Because the things that are on your list that you did yesterday, they're not going to go away. You still need them done. And these things that could happen are still going to happen. They're not going to go away. Most of them. Some of them you can make a plan so that they don't happen. And we'll talk about some examples of some of those. But in the examples of the ones that you can't prevent, we need to figure out how to plan around them. I remember, like, at this point in my business, I mentioned yesterday, it's been about 10 years in my business. And at this point in my business, my two boys, Zach and Ben, the Z&B of Z&B Consulting, Zach is 22 and Ben is 16. So when I started my business 10 years ago, Ben, actually, when I started working from home and dabbling in, should I do a business, should I not? I incorporated 10 years ago, but I was still like kind of playing in those waters prior to that for a few years. So Ben was like, let's say maybe 3 or 4 when I first stopped working for other people and started kind of playing around with the idea of doing my own business. And he was little. And Zach at that time, they're 6 years apart. So what, he was 9. I had kid things I had to do. Whereas fast forward now, I still have kid things to do, but they're different. Both of the boys can drive. So like, for instance, my shoes had to be returned to Kohl's earlier, and Ben was the one who went and returned them for me. So it helped me in the opposite direction because I was able to pass some of those things along. So when you're looking at these things that could hold you back, realize that some of them are seasonal and some of them are going to pass. But when I was at that time and the kids were younger, I had to realize, okay, I only have this small amount of time to do things. So based on the fact that I only have this small amount of time, I'm going to have to really work intentionally. Sometimes it would be a matter of going and working at a coffee shop and making sure that the kids were just home with my husband, hanging out and having fun. Sometimes it was a matter of getting up earlier or making sure while they were in school for that little bit of time that I was getting stuff done then. So how I planned around it, how I planned around the things that could possibly happen were different depending on what the needs and the solutions were. But I still had to plan ahead for these interruptions that could come up. What could happen? Another thing, what could get in the way? Another thing that's gotten in the way for me in the past has been family getting sick. We're all at that point in our lives. Actually, anybody is at any point in time. You could have a parent who gets sick. You could have a child who gets sick. You could have a very close friend who gets sick. It could be an aunt, an uncle, a sibling. Any of those things could happen. And now it could be yourself that you're sick. That's happened with some of my clients as well. And now you're dealing with it. And sometimes it could be a short-term sickness, but it could be a long-term terminal sort of sickness that your person is going through or you're going through yourself. So what could happen when that gets in the way? Sorry. B of Z&B is coming in right now and giving me a drink that he went to the store for me for. So, but I'll put that down for a second there. Thank you, Ben. And so, like I said, the advantage is now he drives, so I didn't have to leave to go to the store to get the drink I wanted. But as I was saying, with sick people, whether it's ourselves, whether it's family members, that could happen. And now all of a sudden, here's this great plan you put together yesterday, and you can't focus on it because you need to only focus on the other. So right now you need to think about that. That's the kind of thing to think through. If that were to happen, what am I going to do? And that actually, I think I started mentioning that happened to me early on in my business, maybe about halfway through. I had a parent that got really sick that I was taking care of, and I was the one who had a more flexible schedule. So I made sure to go to a lot of the doctor appointments with that parent and the other parent. And I was there as that extra set of ears, and the sibling couldn't because they had just gotten a new job. So what ended up happening is at that point in time, I was very present, and I still took care of my clients. I still did client calls and client work and all the clients who had paid me. I kept my group programs going. But what I had to let go of is I had to let go of something because you couldn't do it all still, especially the kids were younger at the time as well. So what I let go of was the prospecting sorts of activities, going to networking, keeping that flow going of potential new clients. And so what ended up happening is this family member ended up being sick for a while. This maybe went on for like half a year, maybe-ish. And during that time, the clients I was working with, I kept serving, but then when their enrollment was up, I wasn't replacing them with new clients. So I did end up hitting this point in my business where revenue was an issue because I hadn't done those other proactive activities. Now, fast forwarding, had I have gone through an activity like this of what could happen and how do I plan for it, I would have made sure to be more intentional in those tiny little windows, like in between going to an appointment and going to pick up the kids. Make sure I have an ongoing list of prospects that I can talk to and keep that going. In retrospect, I'm now a little smarter about that. And that's why we all work with coaches, right? Because we don't go through these, the coach helps navigate roads that we haven't necessarily been through before. Or if we have been through the roads, they help us navigate them in a better way than maybe we would on our own. So I think that might have been a period in between coaches to where that it's like, I don't have time for that. So I had let that go. And in retrospect, maybe not the best decision, because I know, at least for a lot of my clients and myself, when you need things the most, that's when coaches can be helpful. When you're in those kinds of times and you think, I don't have time, they can help you navigate those things. So that's another kind of thing that could get in the way. Sometimes good things can get in the way. I mean, we talked about sickness. Maybe someone, you find out there's a baby now that's going to be coming. That could now throw things off. There's a move. That was another thing that kind of got in the way for my business a couple of years back when we decided to move. And it was right at the same time that my parents were moving out of state. So my parents moved at the beginning of, they signed their papers at the beginning of April. They moved July 1st. We signed our papers July, like we found out about the news on the drive on July 1st when we were moving my parents. So we signed our papers then, and then we officially moved the beginning of October. And it was crazy because we moved into a short sale. So it was crazy for a couple years since then. And we're still picking up those pieces. But there was a time where that was my main focus and that got in the way of the business. And I had to figure out, how am I still getting some of those plans done? So those are the kinds of big things that could get in the way that come out that are life-changing. There's also little things that can happen. Like I mentioned, somebody coming and interrupting you, or a phone call comes through, or even an idea that comes into your mind. How many times are you sitting there and all of a sudden you start thinking about something and it's like, oh yeah, let me do that. And now you go do that, but you don't remember what you were doing before and you don't come back to it. And it just kind of sidetracks you and you end up being what's called shiny object syndrome. And you are squirreling all over to different areas. I actually have a squirrel somewhere. It's not in this room, so I can't show that. That would have been a good time to have that next to me to show you the little squirrel stuffed animal I usually have on my table at networking events. But those sorts of things, you want to plan for that. So plan for how you're going to handle when those ideas come in your mind. And what you can do, one of the strategies, you got to figure out a strategy that works for you. But something I've done for this is I like to kind of keep a notebook and to write that down in the notebook and continue on what I'm doing. And then when I'm doing it, go back to those things that were in my mind and handle those at that time. So that's one way you can do it. Another thing that could happen is you could all of a sudden be super hungry, or you could not be feeling well because you haven't been eating well. And so how you plan for that to make sure that you're still able to accomplish your goals is you plan ahead to make sure you have enough water to drink, to make sure you have enough healthy snacks that are there. Like those are the kinds of things that could possibly happen too. Like it could be really busy and I don't have any food. So what am I going to do? And I don't know about you, but in those situations, my default is usually run through McDonald's or run through here and get this drink or that drink. And I end up then not being my most effective. So I've been spending a lot of time lately thinking about that. I think I mentioned yesterday that one of my goals for this year is weight loss. And so part of my plan is making sure that I have enough water to drink. I think you guys might have seen me hold this up. And so I like this because it's got a nice handle. It can fit in the car, and I can fill it 3 times during the day and know that I've gotten all of my water. Because what I was doing before then is I have another glass, and it's kind of like a deep like wine kind of glass that I like to drink water in, and it's decorated really nice and it makes me feel good when I'm drinking the water. but it's hard to keep track of how many times I've filled that. And I think I need to drink 2, 4, maybe 6 of those during the day to get the same amount I would get through 3 of these. So it's easier for me to do that. And then I actually bought a second one so that I can keep 2 filled at the same time and 2 in the car at the same time. And for me, I then think the next step into thinking forward. And it's like, okay, if I need to drink 3 during the day, I'm going to drink 1 before breakfast. I'm going to drink 1 between breakfast and lunch, and I'm going to drink 1 between lunch and dinner. And that way I can kind of pace it out. And whatever I'm not able to do with that, I can then drink after dinner. And I say that because breakfast for me usually comes a little later because I like to wait for breakfast and do some fasting in the morning. So I might be up early, but then maybe I'm starting like walking and exercising and meditating around 7, let's say 6:30, but then I might not eat till maybe 9:30. And so during those times, I'm going to be drinking that water. So you want to think about, like I said, little things like that could come into play. And on day 1, I believe, when you were doing your planning on day 1, the areas to think about that you were taking with you and leaving behind, one of them was habits. So when you're thinking about what could happen, go back to those areas to think about that you thought about in day 1, the habits, the people, the networking, the services, and the revenue and expenses. Those were all the things you thought about on day 1 in regards to what are you going to take and what are you going to leave, as well as you thought about it in day 2 as far as what do you want to build into your plan. So now think about those areas in regards to what could hold you back. What could come up in any of those areas that could hold you back? So hopefully those were some good examples for you. Now let's talk about what could support you. And in any of those examples, like I think I mentioned, let's go to the example of somebody could be sick. What could support you? One is to make sure you have the food done ahead of time, or that you have a food idea to make sure that when you're in that situation, you're just kind of going. That's something that could support you. Family members or the parents of kids' friends and stuff like that. They were big support systems for me when things were busy, to be able to just say, hey, can you take Johnny home with you today after band practice? Or can you get him to driver's ed class? It's great how parents just, can work together in that way. So you have those sorts of people who can support you. There's family who can support you. What could support you? Saving, making sure that you have a savings there to pay for unexpected things that come up. Like that's something else that could support you. Coaching, that's something that I mentioned a little bit ago. It's definitely something that's helpful because when you go through all this stuff, it's nice to go through it with someone who's already been through it and someone who's not only been through it themselves, but helped other people with that. And it's really great to find someone who's in alignment with you. I mentioned yesterday, I have a group program that's starting in February, and it's ongoing enrollment. That enrollment could happen in March or April if that's something like February is too soon. But the nice thing about that, when I work with people, you've kind of gotten to see my style from this webinar here. And I'm very, very accommodating, very much trying to get you to work with what's best for you. I'm not that coach who's going to sit there and like be kicking your butt. I was talking with someone earlier and they told me, I'm part of a networking group that at one point was giving free calls for with your membership. You would get a free call with a coach, and myself and some other coaches would give those free calls out. We were part of that program to support our fellow sisters in that way. And the people in the networking group got to choose who they wanted their call with. And so this person's part of that group with me, and I was talking to her this morning, and she said she was listening to something that one of the other coaches had done. And she's like, I knew right away I had to do my call with her because she was really going to kick me in my butt. And I was afraid of her. And I knew I needed to get on and do a call with someone I was afraid of. And it's like, that makes sense. Like there's some, yourself and you know what you need. Do you need someone who's going to be more nurturing, more mother-like, more coddling? That's going to be me. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to help you put limits down, or I'm not going to be firm with you, or I'm not going to like be very frank with you about what you need, but I'm going to do it more in a loving, motherly way. That's just my style. Other people will do it more in your face, I'm going to like make you afraid, like that kind of thing. And there's goods and bads to both of those. It's not saying that either is good or bad, but each person has a preference in what they like to work with. So when you're looking at bringing a coach in to support you, whether it's with your business strategy or whether it's with your finances or whether it's with your eating or your dieting or any of that, your exercise, think about how you resonate, like who you would resonate well with. And you want to make sure that you pick a coach that's in alignment with that. And you also want to make sure that you know what it is that you need and that the coach is going to be able to work with you in those areas too. So, yeah, there's lots of different things out there that could support you. So again, you want to look at those areas that we are thinking about. And in each of those areas, what could support you? One of my sons the other day, I think it was Ben, there's some people in his life that are frustrating lately, and teachers, I believe, are some of them. And we were out last week and we were at a bookstore and he found a book on like how to deal with difficult people. And he's like, Mom, I think I need to buy this. I'm like, all right, if you're going to read, sure, whatever, let's buy the book. And so there might be, if there's people that you're having trouble dealing with, books, books online, there's tons of resources. What you want to be careful about is you don't want to start coming into shiny object syndrome, because what happens is you can go look online and you can look on the social media places and you can Google search and you can say, I need help with X. And now you're seeing 5, 6, 7, 8 things. You're now in all these different places. And you've now been distracted from and procrastinating on this list of things you need to do from yesterday. That's another reason a coach can help you, because you don't have to spend that time looking. The coach can say, here's what you need to know. Here's my training on it. Go watch that training. Or here's what you need to know. I don't have a training on it, but this person's an expert, or this is a great website to look at for that. Go look at it. And then you don't have to go searching for those things yourself. The downfall and the problem with going and searching for yourself is it takes you away from the actual task at hand. And there is actually, like, it's an adrenaline thing. Like, oh, I'm looking at that and that's exciting. And now this and now that. And your adrenaline's going. And so it just continues to feed this vicious cycle. And it's like a hamster wheel. So, and you'll see there's like all over social media, do this 5-day challenge, do this 4-day challenge, watch this, and that, and the other. And I really try not to do a lot of that, because I don't want my clients to be, ooh, now let's do this because I said this is coming up. And now let's do this because I said this is coming up. I think I mentioned yesterday that I'll be doing another webinar at the end of April to help plan for the summer, and another one in September to help plan for the end of the year. I could have made the choice to do monthly webinars, but I don't like to feed into that shiny object. Now here's a new thing, shiny object. Now here's a new thing. Instead, I purposely picked those times, as well as the December and January I did, because I feel like they're important times for people to take pause and to intentionally think about the different parts of their business. So that's why I put that in place. And I knew that in putting that in place, that it was going to be able to support the different people that I come in contact with, whether I meet them at a chamber, whether I meet them at parish council at church, whether I meet them at the kids' school, or their clients are part of the nonprofit that I work for. Any of those people can benefit from taking time to pause, taking time to look at what's working well, what's not working well, adjust the plan, and then figure out what support needs to be coming into play. So that's why I intentionally chose to do it at those points in the year as opposed to monthly, because I don't want people doing stuff just because, like, hey, come to my webinar just because it's here. And I also don't want to be doing webinars just because. And for anyone kind of paying attention, at one point this was going to be a 4-day webinar, because I really wanted to have an extra day where people could come ask questions. But when I realized what was going on with my week this week, and I realized the volume of people that were coming to this webinar, which wasn't a lot, more like watching the replay, I thought, I don't need that 4th day, so let me change it. And I made that decision early yesterday. And I right away went in and changed the handout to say 3-day versus 4 and the flyer and the marketing so that that could all match. Now, because I knew my intention, we talked about intention yesterday. I knew my intention is to find more peace for myself. I was able to easily make that decision when I was seeing how the webinar was going through the week. Now, when I do the one in April, if it makes sense for me to do a fourth one, I may do that. I may promote it as a 3-day. And then when I get into day 1 and 2, if a lot of people are on there, I may say, hey, I'm doing a bonus day and come on this day too. That's the beauty when you do your own business, to be able to ebb and flow and to be able to pay attention to things. So you don't have to wait until next April when I do this training again to say, hey, what's going well, what's not going well. You can do that in the moment, just like I did with this webinar. So all of these things that you've learned in these 3 days, you can put into practice during your everyday. Each week, you can sit back and kind of look at those things. Each month, each quarter. I actually have a training I do that's a quarterly deep dive that with my clients, I do that. I don't do that as a webinar, but those who are in my group coaching program, we will be doing a quarterly deep dive where I go through these things with them during the quarter and say, hey, now reflect back to your plan that you made and see if this still works or not. So, all right, let me look at the homework I had on here for today for you. Hopefully that was a good idea or a good list of things that could support you. What I want you to do for the homework, you're going to drop me an email again. And let me tell you guys a little bit for a second why you're dropping me an email. Number 1 is to get that accountability. That's something that happens with the group coaching program I mentioned in that's going to be starting. But it's that accountability. But the other reason, the reason you're sending it to, and it's reflection, to give yourself that time to think about that. But beyond that, why am I having you email me? And why am I not having you go post something in a Facebook group like you've probably seen in some other webinars and stuff like that? I could have you go post something in a Facebook group and then you're interacting with other people and I'm able to interact with you there. Here's the thing. I don't like Facebook groups. I don't like spending my time there. Remember my intention of being still? Some people, that fuels their soul. They love the interaction. They love all that. For me, it takes me away from in-person interaction. And I really love in-person interaction. And I love being able to have the dialogue and have the back and forth. Last night, I actually did a training for a bunch of staff at a special recreation department. And it was on Zoom as opposed to in person because it was easier for more people to get there. But it wasn't as exciting. It didn't fuel my soul as much. I couldn't connect really with all the different people on the screen. So I truly love live in-person things. And knowing that that's what I like and what I don't like, and that's my preferences, I wasn't going to just now go into a Facebook group and be present in a Facebook group when I don't like that. So instead, it was easiest at this point in this stage of me making some changes in my business to say, shoot me an email. I know I'm going to see the email. I actually, don't like going into my email that often, but I know I will see it. I know I'll be able to interact with you. So that's why I intentionally chose that. It was from looking at what I like and don't like and what my clients need. And I knew people need a way to interact, but I don't want to be doing the admin part of the Facebook group. So that is why you're emailing. So what you're emailing in your homework today is what ahas have come up for you regarding your habits. And is that today? Let me see. Hold on. That might be yesterday's. Give me a second. There might be no homework today. Hold on. I'm looking at, you guys probably have the handout in the right order. And I do not right here. The pages are all sitting all over. I apologize. And you can, at the back of your handout, see the different things that are in the group program. So that was the homework from day 1. And I apologize, you guys. I am trying to look what things are you planning for the year ahead. Do you feel they're in alignment? So I am reading you the right homework. Okay. So sorry about that little scare there, but yes, I'm reading the right homework. What ahas have come up for you regarding your habits and the way you work and live? That's what you need to, like, once you're done thinking about what you're going to plan around and what could happen and what you need to support you, it really is showing you a lot about your habits and the way that you work and live. So that's why that question is there. And the second one, I should have just looked at the second one. I would have known I was on the right handout. What kind of support could you use to be successful? So shoot me an email on those things. And another little like learning tidbit I'm going to share with you. You notice how like that wasn't perfect, right? I'm going to make this recording available for people to come watch. I'm not going to spend time editing that out, you guys, because this is a free webinar and that's not revenue producing. It would be better for me to spend that time doing something else that's revenue producing. It also isn't in alignment with my intention, which is to find more times of peace and stillness. So I will, when this recording is done, download it and upload it to the page so that people can access it. But I won't be doing any editing to edit out that little fumble I just made. Here's another reason why. Not only because it's not revenue producing, but because I want you, the viewers who are here watching this, to realize that you can take imperfect action. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to move forward. And you have so many gifts to share in the world. Share them in an imperfect way, because your ideal people aren't going to care. They're going to be like, oh, she couldn't figure it out. That's kind of funny. I was sitting right here with the answer the whole time, but she finally figured it out. All right, that's great. And it gave me an extra couple minutes to get some drinks out of my water, whatever. So be uniquely you and allow yourself to do that. And that I love to role model that. So if you ever see those kinds of weird things in my videos, that's why I'm trying to role model that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you to be able to share your gifts in this world. And that's it. So with that being said, if you would love to know more about my group coaching program that is starting, like I said, there's information about it in the very back of the handout. It kind of shows you what's going to be included. And shoot me an email and let me know that you would like to have a conversation about that. And we will have a conversation about that. And until then, I hope you have a great, great start to your year. And if any questions come up, just reach out. I would love to support you. Thank you for being here and for taking time to focus on you and your business. Bye-bye.